Can you tell me where you're from?
Summerville.
You live in Summerville?
Hey, we turn that thing kind of like looser.
What do you do when you get mad? Oh, you grab. What's something that makes you mad?
When Leah has alone time and I want to be with her.
So what makes you mad?
Because sometimes my blankets are stinky.
Oh, that is bad, isn't it?
Finn, why are you destroying my room? You have a whole other room to destroy.
What makes Chris mad?
Having to get off the video games, when I walk in his room, talking to him, stepping on his shoes.
Well, usually when I get mad and I'm at home, I scream into a pillow.
Leah makes me so angry.
Oh, what does Chris do when he gets mad?
Yells at me, sometimes hits me, but I hit him back because that's not gonna happen.
When I ask someone to do something in a group project or something and they don't do their thing.
Oh, yeah. Everybody working together and everybody not pulling their weight, right?
I'm hungry. When someone shines a light in my face.
Do you slam doors?
Occasionally. A lot of times she just crosses her arms like this and just stares.
Does your mom ever get mad?
Well, she gets mad a lot of times at Gita.
Does your mom ever get mad?
Everyone gets mad.
What does your mom say when she's mad? Does your dad get mad?
Only at family picture time.
Are we almost done with this?
One time I used my phone and did a timer, and she said okay, you have 10 minutes left, and then 3 minutes later, I stopped the timer and showed her.
Oh, yeah. And so what do you do?
Well.
After you get mad, what should you do?
Say sorry.
Say sorry, yeah. Hey, I'm excited that we've had an opportunity just to ask some kids really about what makes you mad, and about anger, and about things and how they respond when they get mad. And so I think we've all learned maybe some life lessons and are reflecting back on even how maybe we used to act when we got angry. Can you show us what you do when you get mad? Okay, show us what you do.
Well done. Well done, Braden on our staff, and Rhonda for putting that together, and thank you for donating your children. I always love if I can see them watching the parents squirm while that's going on. Don't go there, don't go there. So it's a great lead in to our topic, of course, today, part 2 of dealing with your feelings. Let me say what I said last week in case you weren't here last week out, and thank you for tuning in. My name's Randy out there. In your homes or wherever you're watching, as well as here. We're so glad that you're here today with us. Dealing with your feelings is not 3 lessons on pop psychology. I'm not a psychologist. I told the earlier group I used to be a sociologist, and then I had children, and I realized I've got nothing to offer there either. But I am a Christ follower. So what I do bring to this discussion is what the scriptural input, the wisdom of the Bible has about that from some incredibly learned men. So, by the way, before I forget, you saw a video. Thank you for giving as you contribute to the ministries of this church, because we have continued exactly 100% of all the missions we committed to going into 2020, and we've been able to do that because of your great giving, so we appreciate that. My friend Rick, who was kind enough to shoot the video, that was in one of the worst devastation areas, Lake Charles, Louisiana. And we sent several pallets of goods and supplies out there from our funds for our missions that we have here. So thank you for doing that. He called a quick attention to, thank you for Mark, who drove it all out here in his rig and all like that. Here's the connection that to me was tremendously emotional. Mark, who drove that tractor trailer truck, is the Mark I just baptized up here in these waters. So, Mark, are you here? I don't know if Mark's out yet or not, but anyway, Mark and his family have all come to Christ, and they're all getting plugged in here to the church and everything. He literally was like 4 days old as a Christ follower when he volunteered to drive his truck at a loss to take that stuff out there. And that's incredible. It's incredible. Next week, Lord willing, we're going to talk about grief, the dynamics of grief, suffering loss, and the following one after that, addictions, the addictive temperament. Now, I know that doesn't affect 100% of the people here or watching out there, but I would wager that maybe close to 100% of our families have somebody that's affected by all of that too. So, we live in what is called a secular, post-Christian society. There's 100 definitions of that. But there's some really intelligent guys, way smarter than me, by the last name of Comer and Sayer, and a philosopher, believe it or not, a Korean philosopher by the name of Cho. They, in all of their writings, it's amazing, they have sort of come together, and my paraphrase of what they observed in this society as philosopher, theologian, and sociologist, what they have come up to is secular society breeds lonely people. And you may or may not agree with that, but here's the support of this. Secular society, which does not need really an affiliation with religion and Christ, they also have their salvation schema, it's called, but their salvation looks a little bit different than what the Christian world says. Their salvation is defined by getting in touch with the inner you. Finding yourself, finding, your story, your narrative, being able to function in that. And we've grown up, so many people have grown up saying, you can do anything you want to do. You can do anything in the world you want to do. And so this adds enough pressure on the secular mindset to where they're thinking something is stopping me. Because I went down this road, it didn't work out. I went this way, it didn't quite work out. This was empty, this was meaningless. And so at the end of that, just like our gospel has good and evil, their evil is anybody who would oppress or corrupt your pursuit of finding the inner you. You with me? So what does this create? Obviously in opposition to anybody that's different or doesn't quite see the world or join in on their truth like it ought to be, because these people are making me a victim. And if I'm a victim because of this, then I have a right to be really mad. And underneath this, though, or this underneath this is, it's hard to admit it, but the end of this trail to the secular mind is they're still lonely. Because our thesis is we're all created by the design of a sovereign God who created us, and He created us for the purpose of knowing Him. Therefore, the only true fulfillment, the only real way to discover who I am is to be, as Colossians says, hidden in Christ. Because when I come in contact with Him and I have that conversation like 9 people just are celebrating today, then all of this is not really necessary, because my inner you is all wrapped up in the identity of Christ in me. And that actually is not restrictive, y'all. That is the most liberating way to live. It sets us free. So, having said that, let's go to anger, shall we? Now, I'm not saying, those of you out there as well as in here, I'm not saying that, oh yeah, those secularists, of course they're mad and upset and lonely because they don't have Christ. Christians don't get mad. You know different, right? Because the book of Ephesians is written by a guy named Paul in the first century, guess what? To a church. And if he's writing it to a church, he's writing to people who are Christ followers and saying, we got an anger problem in here that we need to deal with. And so here's where we all suffer as Christ followers or not. There's always something underneath your anger. Always something underneath. Why? Because the psychologists, I'm not one, the psychologists tell us that's a secondary emotion. It is always spurred by something else, usually hurt or fear. And if you trace it back and you source it back well enough, many times you can figure that out. When my kids were small, one of them fell and just cut his head open on the corner of a brick step. So I grab him up and wrap a towel and I rush to the emergency room. My wife's driving, I'm sitting in the back. All these worst case scenarios are flashing through my mind. By the time we get to the ER, I am mad as a hornet. Why? Fear. Fear over his safety, fear over an injury that wouldn't be fully healed or something like that, I guess. And so that's just a crude example of that. Here's the good news, our central point for the day. You can control it or it will control you. So you decide and I have to decide. I'm either going to get on top of my anger and I'm going to control it, or it's going to control me. And nothing good happens when it controls me. Proverbs 29:11, that's on the screen. A fool gives full vent to his anger, but a wise man keeps his what? Under control. So now we come to Ephesians. Thanks for bringing your Bible. Turn on your device or something. It's better if you see it. We're only going to read 3 verses. We're going to break it down. That's our style here. And say, how does this matter to me? Why does it matter to me? And then bring some truth out that we can hopefully use in the week ahead. And that makes us all a little bit better. So I've already kind of told you the context of Paul's writing here. So I'm going to give you some, to make it simple, because my time's a little bit short today, how about some do's and don'ts? If we're going to control our anger and not let it control us, let's go through that. The first don't, I'll start with the don't, is don't cross the line. Look at verse 26, chapter 4 of verse 26. In your anger, do not sin. I'm going to stop right there. In your anger, do not sin. That word for anger in the Greek meant a kind of a slow burning, gradual ramp up, long-term anger that's just there under the surface. It's not the violent, fierce kind. That's the kind of anger he's describing here, and I'll tell you why that's important. So how do I not cross the line? Are you implying that there's some anger that is not sinful? Yep, I am. And I'll get to that, because there's righteous anger and there's unrighteous anger. How do you know? Unrighteous anger is usually pointed toward a person, and it's undisciplined. It'll kind of get beyond your control, or you'll say or do things or not say or do things that you should or shouldn't do, and then you regret that, and that anger has put you in a worse position. And also, many times, there's no action behind it. It's just anger. It's not corrective. Righteous anger is hopefully corrective. If you've judged it right and it's righteousness, then there's something to do, hopefully, to try to correct it or resolve it or work against it. It is not against an individual. It's against the act, the event, the culture dynamic, or whatever is going on there. That is the big difference. Now again, the hint of this is only going to be something you can discern the better you get to be a Christ follower. Because I can fool myself in a minute, and I can justify my anger and say, oh, I was just right. Well, no, there's nothing righteous about it. It's just, it annoyed me. And I decided to get mad. There's a theologian by the name of Buckner. Buckner wrote one time, he said, there's 7 deadly sins. This is one of them. Of all the 7 deadly sins, anger may be the most fun sin. Because we use it when we want to use it sometimes, right? Only problem is that doesn't. Now, how do you know, Randy? You said you used scripture. I can tell you specifically Mark 3:5. Mark 3:5 is a good example of righteous anger. Because guess who's doing it? Jesus. Sabbath, he's in church. They bring this poor guy who's got a disability in front of him. They're tempting him, trying to trap him, because you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath. If he heals this guy, he's working on the Sabbath, and they can then say, hey, look, he broke the law. He can't be the Messiah. He can't be, he's a fraud, clearly, if he does, ignoring the plight and the suffering of this young man and ignoring the supernatural powers of Jesus. Jesus sees right through him because what? He's God. He's Son of God. So as he looks right through him and realizes it's a trap they're trying to step him into, Mark 3:5 says he looked around at them and he was angry. He was ogre in the Greek. He was angry. And Jesus never sinned. So what we have here is righteous indignation. Charles de Gaulle was the French general during World War II. He had a little bit of a rivalry with Churchill of England during that time. They didn't see eye to eye on some things. England and France didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things. But he had a quote one time I thought was pretty good. Charles de Gaulle said, "When I'm right, I get angry. When Churchill is wrong, he gets angry. That's why we stay mad at each other all the time." Now, that's not exactly the righteous indignation there. That's his version of righteous, right? So we have to be careful. So what's a do? Here's a do. Define it and source it. Define it and source it. What do I mean by that? Analyze it. Here's the deal. Psychologists say there's two basic groups that we fall into when it's not the controlled anger well. You either clam up or you blow up. Which are you? You harbor it, you go quiet, you kind of hold it in there, you nurture it, and 14 years later, you have an event. And everybody says, what? All I did was not put the dishes in the dishwasher. Well, it wasn't about that. It was about 14 years, right, of harboring something. There are other people who, instantly. There's broken furniture, there's stuff laying around, people are running for cover and all that stuff. The clam up is easier on the people around you, but it does bad things to your health. The blow up, it's over and you feel better afterwards, but guess what? There's people wounded and bleeding around you. Neither one are really healthy. Neither one are good. And can I give you a hint? Guys, the ladies already know this. We typically can only identify, for early stages, we only can identify anger. We can't identify very well what's underneath it. Now, the ladies are doing this because you can identify that. You've got that intuition and you can do it. Now, I know men, it's hard for you to believe that my wife, I've ever made my wife angry for something I've done or said. But all the ladies, again, you're nodding your head like, oh, I know he could be a hard one to deal with. I know he. And here's where I would get into trouble. I'd do something, say something wrong, stupid. We get into the car. We're going somewhere, going home. It's quiet. It's icy. And so then I could even sense that. And I would say something like, hey, I'm sorry I made you mad. And every time she would say, I'm not mad, I'm hurt. You ever done that, ladies? So I'm thinking, gosh, you sure look mad to me. And then, so I got a little smarter. And next time it happened, I would say, hey, Sarah, I am so sorry. I know I hurt you. Guess what she would say? I'm not hurt. I'm mad now. I'm mad. So in baseball, they call that an offer. You go 0 for the day. You go 0 for 4, 0 for 5. You can't get a hit. You can't get on base. I finally realized, don't go there. Ask her, what did I say or what did I do and how are you feeling right now? Just a little word to the wise. Those of you, I might be the only one in the room that has made that stupid mistake. So source it and do this. Heard about a guy, tragically his wife passed away and some 2 or 3 teenage children were involved at the graveside after the funeral. They're laying her to rest And as they start the proceedings, a thundercloud was rolling up off to the side. All of a sudden, this crack of thunder goes across the sky. And this boom, this deep thunder rolls. And the dad turned to his son at that point and say, "Your mom just got to heaven." Number two, don't. Don't carry it around, okay? Second part of verse 26. Don't let the sun go down while you are still angry. Now, some of you are literalists when it comes to interpreting the Bible, and there's parts of the Bible, absolutely, it ought to be. That's literal. Do not kill is literal. Do not kill. But this, y'all, don't take it literal. This does not mean, because sun goes down at 7:08 today. That doesn't mean up until 7:07 you can just pitch a fit all day long. That's not what that means. It doesn't mean that daylight savings time you get an extra hour to be mad. It means prolonged in their day, first century pre-electricity. Don't carry it over. Don't carry it over without dealing with it. It's going to be bad for you, and later on it's going to come out sideways. It's going to be bad for somebody else too. So don't carry it around, because there's always something underneath that. So here's a do. What do we do about not carrying it around? Do conform to Christ, and do keep it in perspective. Conform to Christ, keep it in perspective. Philippians 1:27 is a great verse to live by. And whatever happens, behave in a manner worthy of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Whether it's the best day or the worst day of your life, and whatever happens, behave in a manner worthy of the gospel of Jesus Christ. So, are you saying that we can control our anger? I'm not convinced. Because mine's pretty bad, and it gets out there, and I don't realize what's happening. Can you control it? Well, let's put it to the test. When you have to get all of a sudden out in public, does it go down? Back in the day when there were, and kids, this is a little thing for you because you don't know what I'm talking about. Back in the day, there were these big old heavy telephones sitting on stands in houses or on walls. They were called landline phones, okay? And those actually, way before you could group talk and group communicate, they were doing that in the 60s on those landlines. They were called party lines. Exactly. But the point of that being, back in the day when one of those would ring, and it would always split your eardrums. It's set so loud in my house. Scare you to death. But there'd be guys spread all over the place, and all of a sudden there'd be this argument of who was going to answer it. Somebody get the phone. Somebody else would yell, I'm doing my homework. I'm cooking dinner. And there'd be a fight, And then somebody would finally get up while that thing is ringing. And as they're walking, they're yelling at the other people in the family. I don't know why it's always got to be me. Hey, so good to hear from you. If you've ever been in that encounter, you can control your anger. Don't tell me you can't control your anger. It can be controlled. Is it constructive? Can anger ever be constructive? I'll tell you this, it can be a huge motivator for good or evil, but in good it can be a huge motivator if it is indignation. Indignation says, there is no doubt this is unjust, this is wrong, this is shockingly disapproved of, and I as a Christ follower am insulted, I'm angry about it, I'm going to look for a way to address it and correct it if I can, or bring somebody into bear who can do it. That is when it is constructive. Some of the greatest inventions and some of the greatest liberation of people groups has been when somebody finally got mad enough that they spent the rest of their life addressing it. So that is when it is constructive. Because we got to get on top of this or it's going to control us. My third, don't cooperate with the devil. Amen. Verse 27, and do not give the devil a foothold. Do not give devil a foothold. Devil, as you know, is a poser. He's the father of all lies. So he's going to take good gifts or just neutral gifts, and he's going to twist them, and he's going to make us react badly to them or carry stuff inside that we misuse. What's an indicator of cooperating with the devil? If you don't realize it, but you've gotten cynical and insulting and condemning and condescending at times. There's passive-aggressive behavior going on. Not every time, but sometimes there's an underlying layer of anger that brings that out. And the enemy will use it to the maximum of his advantage if he can. And if you're not aware of it and you're not able to be accountable and you won't deal with it, if it is brought to your attention and you continue to do that, what's it do? Please be proactive and review it. If it's control it, then before the event happens, decide, here's how I know it's coming, and here's what I'm going to do about it. Look at verse 31. Get rid of bitterness, rage, and anger, brawling and slander, along with every kind of malice. That word rage in the NIV, anger is also, what's the difference between rage and anger? Anger was the Greek word we defined earlier. Rage was a completely different word, and it had to be with fierce, boiling, white-hot, almost instantaneous anger. It's a different animal altogether. Did Jesus ever do this anger, the rage anger? No. But does God? Yes. Believe it or not, God is a wrathful God. It's always directed at the sin. It's never directed at us. But this is the exact word used in Revelation when it says there's a day coming that after the plagues and the pestilence hit here, and we're all pretty aware that the world is coming apart at the seams, God is going to come down. His Son will be introduced again, and right behind that, He's coming to judge. And this is what frame of mind He's going to get here with. It ain't going to be good. That's not to scare you to death, but it's to make you and me aware that not only is there righteous indignation, there are levels of it, and that we are very, very susceptible to misapplying it in unrighteous situations or misapplying it in ways that do not honor God. So how do I do that? How do I be proactive? Be aware of it. Be aware of your anger. Accept responsibility of it. You know, can I vent for a second right now on something I get upset about, I get mad about? I'm so tired of people in the public eye going on after they have done just the most stupid things in the world, lost their cool, lost their temper, hurt a lot of people. Then they know to keep their job or to keep their status or to keep their viewers on their social media and all, they'll get on and do this quick, I'm sorry, I apologize, I was wrong, but I got lost in the heat of the moment. No, you didn't. You sinned inappropriately. This isn't, oh, I'm a victim of my own emotions. But by the way, I'm not responsible anyway, because there's always somebody getting in the way of my utopia. Oh, no. You decided to go there, and you did it in a very public format. People got hurt. You need to own it, buddy. And I have to, you have to, I'm accountable, you're accountable. In the end, if not now, in the end, everybody is accountable. So own it. Own your stuff. And then apply control. Stay in the Word. Stay in prayer. Get a prayer partner. If it is still out of control, be man enough, be a courageous lady enough to get outside support coming in. Get somebody from the outside who's got some skills and behavior and who can help you navigate that. Take care of all of that, please. You don't want to be guilty of the Jim Carrey syndrome. Jim Carrey syndrome years ago was defined, and that means the madder you get, the dumb and dumber you are, right? And it's true. It's true. Some of the stupidest things I have said or fired off in an email or done, when I look back on it, it was like, oh yeah, I was mad. Something completely disengaged up here. Now there's anatomical reasons in our brain for that. But it's a true statement. You get dumber the madder that you get. At the end of this, when you're aware of it, you try to reconstruct it. My only other thing is you're going to have a lot of chemicals now, adrenaline and stuff that's still surging in your body. Find a release, go for a run, go down to the gym, go do something physical. Burn that energy off because it's going to come back on you. It'll come back on you. So this isn't about suppression. So let's review the facts. What are we not going to do? We're not going to cross the line and get into unrighteous anger. We're not going to carry it around. We're not going to cooperate with the devil. We are going to define it so we can see the source of it. We're going to stay or be today, starting today maybe, conformed to Christ, and we're going to be proactive. Here's the good news. God made this unbelievable, amazing provision for you and for me, and He already knew how messed up I am, and He already knew your issues. And that way, that provision is called the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, can I define in my world, can I define two things? This does have a salvation motif. It is a culture. This is a way of life. But this is like the gospel without the gospel. It has no power. Because so many people, the reason they're lonely, they get the end of every road that they chase. They don't know anything more about themselves than they did before that. And now they're mad about it or lonely about it. And the panic underneath is, I don't know where to go next. Jesus walks into the picture and He says, you know what? I got to live in water right here. I have the true way of life. Matter of fact, let me just break it out for you. John, the Father and I are the same guy. Let me break it out how you should live. I've come to give you a life and to give it to you abundantly. Not carefree, not the inner you that never suffers any discomfort, but the real world you. You're going to have some struggles. You're going to have some pain. You're still going to be a sinner. Not everything will go your way. Not everybody will be fair to you. You're going to get messed with and you're going to get messed over. But you got this one life I gave you, and I've loved you so much, I gave mine up so you could get a fresh start. And if you're willing to believe in me and by faith surrender your life to me, you know what? I'll give you the best deal in the world. I'll give it back to you, restored and healed, and then you spend it the rest of the life in absolute freedom because you're under my care. So let me kind of wrap it up by saying I so dearly want all of you and all of you out there. I don't care if you live in Kansas and Nebraska and all those places. I want you to find the gospel with the gospel. I want you to find the real thing. And that can start today. It really can. Because there's nothing that's stopping you. There's no barrier that you can't overcome because Christ has already overcome those things. And let me just give you a little personal. When I realized that this Jesus of Nazareth prophetically with pinpoint accuracy predicted His death and His resurrection 3 different times publicly, no telling how many times privately, and then He pulled it off, and then He appeared to hundreds and hundreds of people historically in the flesh after He had been dead and buried. You know, whatever He says next, I'm pretty good with that. I'll follow that because that is real. That is genuine. That's not hocus pocus. And so I just want to invite you to do the same thing. The 9 guys earlier and the 7 people at 9 o'clock, They didn't get all soaking wet just because they thought this ritual would make them better people in finding their inner you. They already knew their inner them. His name is Jesus Christ. And I'm going to ask Braden and our group to come on up. And like we close out most of our services, I want to pray for you. And I want to especially pray for you all out there. And if you'll just pray this prayer at home where you are or here in the room with me silently as I pray, I just want to take that opportunity and not miss that opportunity. And then please contact us with decisions, with prayer requests, things like that you need. And we can steer you toward a good church in your area if you're not in one, or steer you here if you're in this area. Out here, the same thing. Love to hear from you out here on the steps or out here under the tent. And just say, here's what I just did, and so what do I do to take the next step? That's like the most important thing to do right now. Could you stand and let me pray for you? If you'll just pray along with this prayer. Jesus, I'm calling your name specifically because your word says that you stand at the right hand of the Father right now. And not only have you been waiting to hear us, but you're waiting to intercede for me. I cannot understand how powerful it is for me to pray and then you to interpret it to the Father. So Jesus, today I need you. I don't need a new way of life. I don't need a self-help book. I don't need my inner self. I need to get rid of my inner self. I need a new inner self. So God, would you please come into my life? And Jesus, would you forgive me of my sins? And would you make me that person who can start fresh and start new, and as a Christ follower, legitimately master my emotions, namely my anger? We ask this in His name. Amen.